It was supposed to be a conversation. Two women. No audience, no applause, no distractions, just microphones, sharp questions, and nowhere to hide. But when Meghan Markle sat down across from Megyn Kelly, something shifted in the room. The smiles were thin, the pauses were loaded, and behind every polite word, something was already cracking. By the end of this interview, one of them would lose control, and the other would make sure the cameras never forgot it. The studio was quiet in a way that felt intentional. No audience, no laughter track, no warm energy to soften what was about to happen. Just two women sitting across a table, microphones positioned carefully, red recording lights glowing like silent witnesses. Meghan Markle adjusted her posture, crossing one leg over the other with practiced elegance. Her expression was composed, confident, almost bored. She wore a faint smile, the kind that suggested she believed she was already above the conversation. Across from her, Megyn Kelly glanced down at her notes, then back up at Megyn, calm, measured, neutral, at least on the surface. Megyn began smoothly, her voice steady. "Thank you for joining me." Megyn nodded once. "Of course," she replied. "I believe conversations like this are important, especially when women are given space to speak freely." The emphasis on freely did not go unnoticed. Megyn smiled slightly. "That's exactly what we're here for, a pause, the kind that stretched just a second longer than necessary." Megyn leaned forward just enough to signal engagement. "You've spoken a lot about reclaiming your voice and stepping away from royal life, about autonomy, about control, but many people feel your story is selectively told." Megyn's smile tightened. "Well," she said lightly, "that's an interesting way to frame lived experience." Megyn didn't flinch. "Is it? Or is it a fair question when so many details seem to change depending on the platform?" The air shifted. Megyn tilted her head, her eyes sharpening just a fraction. "I don't think trauma needs to be narrated the same way every time to be valid." "Of course not," Megyn replied calmly. "But consistency does matter when credibility is involved." Megyn let out a short, breathy laugh. Not amused, dismissive. "Credibility according to whom?" she asked. "Tabloid editors, commentators who built careers attacking me." Megyn's tone remained even. "According to the public, according to people who listen carefully." Megyn leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. The movement was subtle but defensive. "I find it fascinating," she said, "how a woman speaks about her pain, and suddenly everyone becomes an expert in how she should do it." Megyn nodded slowly, "And I find it fascinating how criticism is often labeled as cruelty when it becomes inconvenient." Silence. Megyn's jaw clenched slightly. She looked away for half a second, then back. "You know," she said, her voice smoother now. "This feels less like an interview and more like an interrogation." Megyn met her gaze. "Only if honesty feels threatening." That landed. Megyn's smile returned but colder. "I came here to talk about my work," she said. "My initiatives, my advocacy." "And we will," Megyn replied. "But context matters. Your work exists inside a very public narrative, one you helped shape." Megyn's fingers tapped once against the table. "Are you implying I manipulated my story?" she asked. "I'm asking whether you curated it," Megyn answered. The distinction hung between them. Megyn leaned forward now, mirroring Megyn's posture. "I don't need to curate pain. It exists whether you approve of it or not." Megyn didn't blink. "Pain exists. Accountability does too." The tension was no longer subtle. Megyn exhaled sharply. "This is exactly the problem," she said. "Women like me are expected to explain ourselves endlessly, while others get applauded for silence." Megyn raised an eyebrow. "Silence or restraint?" Megyn's voice sharpened. "That sounds like a judgment." Megyn's reply was immediate. "Only if it applies." Another pause. Heavier this time. Megyn shifted in her seat, adjusting her sleeve. "I agreed to this interview because I believed you were capable of nuance." "I am," Megyn replied. "That's why I'm asking questions instead of offering sympathy." Megyn's eyes flashed. "Sympathy isn't what I need." "No," Megyn said softly. "Control is." That was the moment. Not the explosion yet, but the crack. Megyn stared at her, stunned for a beat. Then she smiled again, slow and deliberate. "Well," she said, her voice silky but sharp. "This is already far more revealing than I expected." Megyn glanced briefly at the camera. "So are you," she said, and somewhere between those words, it became clear. This conversation was no longer about stories. It was about power, and neither woman was willing to give it up. The room felt smaller now, not physically, but emotionally, as if the walls had inched closer the moment Megyn realized this wasn't going to be a sympathetic conversation. Megyn uncrossed her arms and leaned forward again, this time with intent. "You keep framing this as control," she said, her voice sharper. "But isn't it interesting how women are only accused of wanting control when they refuse to be silent?" Megyn nodded once. "That's true in many cases." A pause. "But not all," she added. Megyn's eyes narrowed. "So, which category am I in?" Megyn didn't hesitate. "The one where silence was replaced by saturation." Megyn let out a dry laugh. "That's clever," she said, "but also deeply unfair." "Is it?" Megyn asked calmly. "You've spoken on podcasts, documentaries, books, interviews, panels. Yet, you insist you were silenced." Megyn's tone hardened. "You're confusing access with agency." Megyn glanced down at her notes, then back up. "Then let's talk agency. You walked away from the royal institution?" "Yes." "Yes," Megyn replied quickly. "You retained your title," Megyn continued. Megyn shifted slightly. "That's not how you signed multi-million-dollar media deals," Megyn added. Megyn's lips pressed together. "You've built a brand around your story," Megyn said evenly. "So, at what point does storytelling become strategy?" The silence that followed was heavy. Megyn inhaled deeply. "I won't apologize for surviving," she said. "And I won't apologize for using my voice to empower others." Megyn's tone softened, but only slightly. "Empowerment is powerful," she said. "But it becomes complicated when it centers one person endlessly." Megyn scoffed. "So now I'm self-centered." "I didn't say that," Megyn replied. "I said centered." Megyn leaned back abruptly, shaking her head. "This is exactly what I mean. Women are allowed to speak, but only in ways that make others comfortable." Megyn met her gaze, or accountable. Megyn's voice rose a notch. "You keep saying that word, accountability, as if I owe something to people who never live my life." Megyn responded calmly. "Public trust comes with public platforms." Megyn smiled again, but this time there was irritation beneath it. "And who appointed you the arbiter of that trust?" Megyn's reply was immediate. "The same audience you continue to address." Megyn's fingers curled around the arm of her chair. "Let's be honest," she said. "This feels less like journalism and more like punishment." Megyn tilted her head. "For what?" "For daring to step outside a system that was designed to break me." Megyn snapped. Megyn's voice remained measured. "Or for refusing to let go of it while claiming you did." That landed hard. Megyn blinked. "Once, twice." "I gave up everything," she said, her voice tight. "Status, security, family." Megyn didn't interrupt. "And yet," Megyn continued, "I'm still expected to justify that choice to people who will never be satisfied." Megyn leaned forward slightly. "Then why keep explaining it?" Megyn froze. The question hung in the air like a blade. "You could move on," Megyn said gently. "Many people do," Megyn's jaw clenched. "Moving on doesn't mean erasing the past." "No," Megyn agreed. "But reliving it endlessly keeps it alive." Megyn's voice sharpened. "So now I'm exploiting my own trauma." Megyn looked directly at her. "I'm asking whether it's healing or branding." That was the first real crack. Megyn's composure wavered just for a fraction of a second. She looked away, then back, her smile gone. "You're very comfortable questioning my motives," she said coldly. "But have you ever questioned your own?" Megyn raised an eyebrow. "All the time." "Then ask yourself this," Megyn snapped. "Why are you so invested in tearing me down?" Megyn didn't raise her voice. "I'm not tearing you down. I'm asking what happens when a narrative stops evolving." Megyn leaned forward sharply. "You don't get to decide when my story is finished." "No," Megyn replied, "but audiences do decide when they've heard it before." The tension was now unmistakable. Megyn's hands moved as she spoke. Sharper gestures, less controlled. This obsession with audience fatigue is just another way to silence women. Megyn shook her head slowly. "No, it's a reflection of repetition." Megyn's voice rose again. "So, what would satisfy you? Silence? Disappearance?" Megyn answered without hesitation. "Perspective." Megyn laughed. "Short. Bitter. Easy to demand from someone who never lived under global scrutiny." Megyn's tone cooled. "Scrutiny isn't persecution." That did it. Megyn sat upright, eyes blazing. "You have no idea what persecution feels like." Megyn held her gaze. "Neither do people who truly experience it and don't monetize it." The room felt electric. Megyn's breath quickened. "You're crossing a line." Megyn didn't back down only because you drew it. For the first time, Megyn didn't immediately respond. Her silence spoke louder than her words. The microphones captured everything. The tension, the frustration, the shift. And somewhere off camera, a producer glanced at the clock. Because what started as a controlled interview was now something else entirely. And the question was no longer if Megyn would explode. But when the air conditioning hummed like it was trying to pretend nothing was happening, but the set had changed. Not the lights, not the camera angles, the mood. Megyn had stopped smiling altogether. She sat forward now, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on Megyn like this was no longer an interview, but a test she refused to fail. Megyn glanced at her notes. "Before we continue," she said calmly, "I want to clarify something." Megyn didn't blink. "Go on." Megyn's voice stayed neutral. "You've said repeatedly that you left the institution for peace, for privacy, for safety." Megyn nodded once. "Correct." "And yet," Megyn continued, "your public presence since leaving has been constant, more content than most working entertainers." Megyn's jaw tightened. "So, we're back to this. We're back to consistency," Megyn replied. Megyn let out a sharp exhale. "You're acting like speaking is a crime." "No," Megyn said. "I'm asking why the message stays the same." Megyn leaned back slightly, her tone turning icy. "Because the truth doesn't change just because you're bored." Megyn's eyebrows lifted. "So, you believe criticism exists because people are bored?" Megyn's lips curled into something close to a smirk. "I think people like you built careers on turning real pain into entertainment." Megyn's face didn't move much, but her eyes sharpened. "People like me," she repeated evenly. Megyn nodded. "Yes, professional outrage merchants." The room went very still. Off camera, you could almost feel someone mouthing, "Careful." Megyn didn't bite. She just asked, "Is that how you handle pushback? Label it. Dismiss it. Move on." Megyn leaned forward. "No, I set boundaries." Megyn nodded once. "Then let's test that. If this is boundaries, what happens when someone asks a question you don't like?" Megyn's voice snapped. "You're not asking questions. You're suggesting motives." Megyn didn't deny it because motives matter when your story is a product. Megyn's hands moved slightly, controlled, but the control was getting thinner. "You keep calling it a product," she said. "But what about your product? Your show, your platform, your audience, your sponsors, you profit too." Megyn smiled faintly. "I don't sell myself as a victim." Megyn's eyes flashed. "Oh, so we're doing moral superiority now." Megyn's voice stayed calm. "We're doing clarity." Megyn laughed, sharp and humorless. "Clarity, right?" Then she leaned in and said it slower, like she wanted every syllable to sting. "You're angry because I didn't break." Megyn's eyes didn't leave her. "No, I'm skeptical because you keep insisting you did while also insisting you didn't." A beat. Megyn stared. "Explain that." Megyn nodded. "You say you were shattered by the institution, that you were hunted, that you were nearly destroyed." Megyn's face hardened. And then Megyn continued. "You present yourself as the most resilient, most enlightened voice in every room." Megyn's voice rose. "Because I survived." Megyn's reply was soft. "Or because survival became your brand." That line didn't explode the room. It froze it. Megyn's mouth opened like she wanted to fire back instantly, but nothing came out for a second. Her eyes went to the table, then back up. "You're disgusting," she said quietly. Megyn didn't flinch. "That's not an answer." Megyn's voice climbed. "You're disgusting because you're doing exactly what the tabloids did, just with better lighting." Megyn tilted her head. "The tabloids made claims. I'm asking about contradictions." Megyn shook her head in disbelief. "You think you're so righteous." Megyn's tone didn't change. "No, I think words matter, especially when they shape public opinion." Megyn leaned forward. "Then here's a word for you. Obsessed." Megyn's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's another label." Megyn continued louder. "You were obsessed with me with Harry. With everything we represent. You don't care about truth. You care about being relevant." Megyn's lips pressed together briefly. "So now you're questioning my motives." Megyn snapped. "At least I'm honest about it." Megyn answered quietly. "Are you?" That single question felt like a switch flipping. Megyn's posture shifted. Her composure didn't just crack, it started to fracture. She pointed slightly with her hand, not wildly, but enough for the cameras to catch the accusation in the movement. "You people," she said, voice sharp. "You sit behind microphones and pretend you're brave, but you've never had to walk into a room knowing the world wants you to fail." Megyn replied, "Most people do. They just don't get paid for it." Megyn's eyes widened. "There it is. Jealousy." Megyn's expression stayed flat. "I don't envy scrutiny." Megyn leaned in like a blade. "You envy influence." Megyn exhaled calmly. If influence is built on repetition, it's not influence. It's noise. Megyn's voice rose again. You're trying to silence me. Megyn's gaze was steady. No, I'm asking you to answer. Megyn snapped back instantly. Megyn didn't move. No, you're performing. Megyn's head jerked back slightly. Performing? Megyn nodded. You're giving the version of yourself that wins headlines, not the one that wins trust. Megyn's hands tightened into fists on her lap. The camera caught it barely. Megyn glanced down at the papers in front of her. Then she said, let's talk specifics. Megyn's eyes narrowed. About what? Megyn's voice stayed level. About statements that changed over time. Megyn's face stiffened. Megyn continued. I'm going to read 2 lines. You tell me which one you stand by. Megyn's voice sharpened. I'm not here for a courtroom game. Megyn looked up. Then don't treat it like one. Just answer. Megyn's breath quickened. A producer's voice, low off camera, murmured something. A warning, a reminder, something like, keep it on track. But it was already off track. Megyn lifted the paper slightly. Megyn stared at it like it was a trap. Megyn asked quietly, Are you ready? Megyn's smile returned thin, hostile. Go ahead, she said. Try me. Megyn's eyes didn't blink. And the way she held that page, steady, patient, precise, made it feel like the next 30 seconds would decide everything. Because once those lines were read out loud, there would be no polite way back. For a moment, no one spoke. The paper in Megyn's hand didn't move. The camera didn't cut away. And Meghan Markle, who had controlled rooms far louder than this, felt something unfamiliar crawl up her spine. Loss of control. Megyn finally read. Quote, 1, she said calmly. We wanted privacy. We wanted a quiet life away from media intrusion. Megyn nodded sharply. Yes. Megyn didn't look up. Quote, she paused. Just long enough. We will continue telling our story in our own words on platforms that reach millions. Silence. The hum of the studio lights suddenly felt deafening. Megyn looked up. Which one is true? Megyn's lips parted. Then she laughed. Not warmly, not nervously, dismissively. That's your big moment? Megyn scoffed. You think you've caught me in some clever contradiction? Megyn didn't rise to it. I'm asking a simple question. Megyn leaned forward, eyes blazing. Both can be true. Megyn tilted her head. Explain how. Megyn exhaled sharply. Privacy doesn't mean silence. It means control. Megyn nodded. Control over narrative. Yes, Megyn snapped. Which you clearly resent. Megyn replied evenly. I don't resent control. I question credibility. That word landed hard. Megyn's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide my credibility. Megyn's tone stayed calm. The audience does. Megyn's voice rose. What audience? This isn't even a real studio. No applause, no energy, just you trying to corner me like this is some expose. Megyn didn't blink. You agreed to the format. Megyn laughed again, sharper. I agreed to a conversation, not an ambush. Megyn held up the paper slightly. These are your words, Megyn snapped. Taken out of context, Megyn replied repeatedly. That was it. Megyn's composure cracked. Her hands came up now, not flailing, but no longer controlled. You know what? She said, voice shaking with fury. This is exactly why people don't trust journalists anymore. You pretend to seek truth, but you're just hunting gotcha moments. Megyn leaned back slightly, then answered cleanly. Megyn slammed her palm lightly on the table. I don't owe you clean answers. Megyn's eyes hardened for the first time. Then you don't get to accuse others of dishonesty. Megyn stood up, not abruptly, but decisively. The chair scraped against the floor loud and final. Megyn's eyes flicked briefly to the producer's monitor, then back to Megyn. Megyn pointed slightly toward the camera. This is what they do. This is how they silence women by pretending to be reasonable while tearing them apart. Megyn stood as well, but only halfway, still grounded, still composed. No, she said. This is how interviews end when guests refuse accountability. Megyn scoffed. You're throwing me out. Megyn's voice was firm now. No softness left. I'm ending the segment. Megyn laughed incredulously. Because I won't play your game. Megyn replied clearly. Because you've stopped answering questions. Megyn shook her head. Unbelievable. Megyn turned slightly toward the control booth. Cut the feed. Megyn's head snapped up. Don't you dare. Megyn didn't raise her voice. Cut it. A producer's voice crackled faintly through an earpiece. Megyn looked straight into the camera one last time, eyes blazing. Let the record show, she said sharply, that I was silenced. Megyn met her gaze. Let the record show. You walked out. The screen flickered for half a second. Megyn was still there standing furious mid-breath. Then the feed cut black. Back in the studio, Megyn exhaled slowly and removed her microphone. She looked directly into the camera. That, she said calmly, is what happens when conversation turns into confrontation. She paused. And for the record, she added, no one is above questions. The clip would go viral within minutes. Headlines would explode. Meghan Markle storms off Megyn Kelly's show. Live interview ends in walkout. Cut the feed. The moment everything collapsed. Some would call Megyn brave. Others would call it a meltdown. But no one would call it controlled. And in a studio with no audience, no applause, no cheering crowd, the silence said everything. What do you think? Was Meghan Markle standing her ground or running from accountability? Did Megyn Kelly cross a line or simply refuse to step back? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you want more high-tension behind-scenes confrontations and moments that never make the headlines whole, subscribe and stay with us, because sometimes the loudest moments happen right after the cameras.